are these strategic consequences for Iranian influence due to this corridor? You spoke that it is a blow, a certain blow to the Russian influence. How about the Iranian one? And you just hinted about that, but let me know, or if you please illustrate on that.
It is a travesty, a geopolitical travesty for Iran. Azerbaijan, as we all know, has very strong ties with both the United States and Israel. Azerbaijan has, as a member country of the Islamic Cooperation Organization, is one of the closest Islamic countries to Israel, and they have a strategic relationship with them. Iran, even some Iranian officials and some quasi-official Iranian media outlets have accused Azerbaijan of facilitating some of the drone attacks and Israeli airstrikes against Iran in the previous Iranian-Israeli war in June, the 12-day war. So now, on the other hand, Iran supported Armenia in all of its wars against Azerbaijan, and they did have a historical relationship of cooperation in order to contain Azerbaijani influence in this regard. Now, with Armenia out of the equation, we can no longer a stark ally of Russia, now under U.S. influence, and now with its own border being potentially with Iran entirely controlled and regulated by the United States. This is a geopolitical disaster for the Iranians. And as we all know, there is an anticipated future war, potential war between Iran and Israel. Again, that the hostilities may be renewed maybe within the next weeks or month. So many reports are insinuating. So if this happens in a time where Iran is basically surrounded by countries that are under U.S. or Israeli influence, of course, this will pose a very huge danger to the Iranians. And also, Armenia was one of the key arteries that was supposed to be there in any potential expanded economic cooperation between the Russians and the Iranians and the Caucasus. Now, of course, this will not be the case anymore. Now, Iran is only linked to Russia through Central Asia, which is a very huge distance, and the Caspian Sea, which is not the most navigable sea in the world. So the loss of Armenia is, which by the way hosts a Russian military base, is a huge loss for the Iranians in many aspects. I think that the United States is moving one of its aims, other than the economic benefits, whether for the United States or for the Trump family, as your honorable guest might have insinuated a bit ago, one of the other aims of this agreement and this direct U.S. intervention in the South Caucasus is to contain Iran and basically surround Iran one way or the other, and also roll back Russian influence in this regard.
Let me here take the comment of Mr. Jonathan. And Mr. Jonathan, Dr. Osman here spoke about the strategic importance for such a move to the U.S. Now, despite what we have seen of the U.S. relations with, for an instance, Turkey, and cooperation with Turkey, with Iran, with the relations with Iran that has already deteriorated, with other regional countries, and despite that, this would put the U.S. relations with them in jeopardy. Now, what could be the strategic importance for this corridor from your point of view?
Well, the American government, regardless of who's president, has a very hostile relationship with Iran and has had going back decades. If you're one of the leaders militarily or diplomatically in Tehran, this is a very alarming development. Basically, Armenia has said, we're going to make our partnership here with Washington and be influenced in other ways that are not conducive to the goals of the Iranian regime. It creates a listening post for the United States and its allies. That can't be pleasing the Iranians. and interferes with the rapprochement that's gone on now for years between Tehran and Moscow. After 1,000 years of enmity between the Persian culture and the Russians, they have been drawn toward each other in the last several decades. This has got to be very concerning to them. And to the U.S., it's another way to limit, harry, and try to influence what goes on in Tehran.
That's it. But we're also speaking about the influence of Russia in this region. We're also speaking about the U.S., Turkey, and Azerbaijan relations and cooperation.
Well, clearly this is a big loser, as your other guest has pointed out, for the Russians. Putin has so much of his resources tied up in the invasion of Ukraine that it's perhaps not surprising that this has not gotten their attention, and that they are the biggest net losers in this arrangement if it becomes reality, as opposed to the outline of the deal that's currently there. Turkey, I don't know enough about Turkey's interests here to comment thoughtfully, but I would suspect that the Turkish government is also less than thrilled with this change in relationship between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and the influence of the Trump administration.
Turkey is still a regional country, or a country,
absolutely,
a power in this region. Dr.
Yes.
Osman, Mr. Osman, let me get back to you. And you spoke about this blow to the Russian influence or leverage there. In which way, or in what ways, could the corridor challenge Moscow's traditional regional dominance? And is this corridor part of a broader push to contain Russian influence in the Eurasia?
I'll answer your question, Mona, while commenting also on some of the points that your dear guest from New York has made. When it comes to Turkey, the idea of the Zangezur corridor to begin with was a Turkish idea. The Turks were the ones who came up with the idea of trying to pierce through Armenian territory with this corridor in order to connect both sides of Azerbaijan. But of course, I would agree with my dear colleague from the United States that the Turks will not be thrilled that the United States will be the ones running the show and not them, since Azerbaijan has been historically under a lot of Turkish influence in this regard. But to them, it's even better as long as Armenia is weakened and diminished and beyond Russian influence. This would be very suitable for the Turks to begin with. And at the end of the day, Turkey is a NATO country and is an ally of the United States, despite their disagreements. And Russia, despite any rapprochement between Turkey and Russia or understandings, they are geopolitical adversaries since the times of the Tsars and the Ottoman Empire. So that's a reality of a historical reality in this regard. And when it comes to the Russians in this calculus, I do not see the Russians as helpless as they might seem. Now we are seeing a huge repositioning of the great powers in many parts around the world. The summit in Anchorage is coming up in Alaska between President Putin and President
We're speaking
Trump.
about tomorrow.
Yep, in a few hours. And this summit, I don't think it will be exclusively on the Ukraine-Russia war. It will extend to other venues as well. And it could be, and it's very evident that the United States is willing to present excessive concessions to the Russians in Ukraine. So there might be some sort of deal in this regard. Russia has a lot of cards it can play in Armenia if it wants. There were 2 coup attempts in Armenia in the past few years, probably supported by the Russians. Probably if the Russians want to take Pashinyan out of the picture and install a pro-Russian government in Armenia, they can do that. The Armenian public is very supportive of Russia, by the way, and very sympathetic towards Russia due to cultural ties between the Armenian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church. And Russia has been a key protector of Armenians in the Caucasus and the northern Middle East historically in past centuries. And Armenia was part of the Soviet Union at some point. So as you can see, modern day Armenia, I mean, because Armenia used to be much bigger than that historically. So as you can see, that there are many cards at play over here. And if the Russians decide to obstruct the ongoing arrangements in the Caucasus, they can very well do that, and they do have the necessary means, even though they are preoccupied with Ukraine, and Ukraine is draining a lot of their resources, but
Yes.
they can.
Yes.
But so far, they're not willing to, probably because they will be given certain concessions in Ukraine. But I do believe that in any way, eventually, Russia and Iran will collide with these American arrangements in the Caucasus, because there are geographical realities that cannot be ignored. And Russia and Iran cannot accept the idea of a strong U.S. foothold in the Southern Caucasus that will present a threat to Iran directly, and also a threat to Russian influence in this very strategic area that is close to Chechnya and other parts of the Russian Caucasus that has a history of being restive and unstable.